Where the Flame Trees Bloom by Alma Flor Ada. Lightning. Mario, my father's younger brother, was a teacher in the countryside. To get to his new school, he had to take the train and then ride for a few hours on horseback. The school was housed in a bohío, a country hut made of royal palm boards and thatched royal palm leaves. The students sat on benches, 3, 4, or when attendance was especially good, even 5 to a bench. But attendance was seldom good. In the countryside, girls often stayed home to help with their little brothers and sisters, to do the washing and to gather wood for the stove. Boys often missed school because they had to help in the fields, planting, weeding, or harvesting. For the most part, the people did not believe that school would much improve their lives, and therefore they did not see a compelling reason to attend. My uncle came back to the city every Friday night, tired, exhausted, and somewhat depressed. "What's the use?" I often heard him say. Soon he too cut class whenever possible. Often, on Monday, he would procrastinate and miss the train. An upset stomach or a small cold was a reason not to travel. Many times he went on Tuesday, and the week would be only 4 days long. Other times he came back on Thursday nights. "Attendance was poor this week," he would say. "It always gets worse on Friday, so I just came home." My father never criticized him. Ever since their mother had died when my father was 15 and my uncle only 10, my father had taken care of Mario. I think the painful memory of their shared loss, their unhappiness at having been sent to boarding school, the loneliness they had both felt, gave my father compassion for his brother. Although Mario was now a man, my father continued to indulge and protect him. My mother, on the other hand, constantly chided my uncle. "How are the children ever going to value their education when you yourself don't? You could do so much for them." My uncle was a person of few words. He drew back from arguments and never tried to defend himself. In fact, he seldom spoke much at all. I could see my uncle's predicament. We were his only family, and, I suspect, his only friends. It must have been hard to have my mother always reprimanding him, but he just kept silent and continued to spend his weekends with us. But one Friday night, Mario did not make his usual appearance at dinner. More surprisingly, he had still not returned by Saturday night, nor on Sunday. My mother asked my father. My father asked my grandfather, but no one seemed to know where he was. Nor did we see or hear from him the following week. Everyone wondered and speculated and worried. There had been heavy rains, so maybe the rivers had flooded and he had been unable to get across. After all, he had often used this excuse in order to avoid going back to school on Monday. Perhaps this time it had really happened after all. The next weekend arrived, but there was still no news of my uncle. Although my father became increasingly alarmed, there was no telephone or telegraph that could reach the remote countryside where the school was. 3 weeks later, when Mario finally returned, he looked like a different man. His normally pink skin was tanned, and his carefully polished nails were now broken and dirty. He needed a haircut, but for the first time ever, he looked sunburned and strong. He said nothing at all about his absence, and, as if by agreement, no one else mentioned it either. We all sat down to lunch. We were enjoying the black beans and rice, the sweet fried plantains, when I noticed on my uncle's wrist a dark yellow scab where he normally wore his wristwatch. "Tio, what is that?" I couldn't help but ask. "Oh, that. It's from the lightning." There was a moment of silence. My mother set down the pitcher of coconut water, even though her glass was still empty. My father put down his fork and knife. No one said a word. At last my uncle spoke. "That first week I was gone," my uncle said slowly, There was a very big storm. And then he stopped. "And?" prompted my father. "What about the lightning?" "The lightning was everywhere," my uncle continued. "It was difficult to teach above the noise of the thunder. The lightning bolts seemed to be flashing all around us." And then he stopped again. "Were many children present?" my mother asked. And as if this were his very cue he needed, my uncle resumed his story. "Yes, for once they were all present. It was crowded and hot in that small room, and the children were all excited, as if charged by the storm. And then it happened." We all held still, waiting to hear what came next. "I didn't even hear the thunder when lightning struck the large mango tree next to the school. I simply passed out. When I awoke, I felt an intense pain in my arm. My watch had melted right onto my wrist. But I didn't pay attention to it. All of the children were strewn about the floor, every single one of them." "Were they dead?" There was panic in my mother's voice. "That's what I thought when I first saw them. Here they are, all dead," I said to myself. "All because they came to hear a teacher who doesn't even believe in their future. But little by little they began to stir and to wake up. Thank goodness, no one was hurt. They weren't even scared, but I was." "So that's why you didn't come all this time," said my father, more to himself than to my uncle. "I've been working on the school. I asked a couple of the fathers to help me enlarge it, and we are building some more benches. We also made a larger blackboard. It will take a while before everything is in place. I spoke with one of the families about renting a room because I am turning my old room next to the classroom into an art workshop. There is so much to be done. I'll probably be coming back only once a month to get supplies." My mother poured herself a large glass of coconut water. As she lifted it to her lips, a golden ray of light came in through the dining room window and lit up the glass. It looked as if she were making an offering.